Our topic for today is all about indigenous cultural communities in the Philippines, focusing Luzon and Visayas. First of all, please take a look in this video.
Hubarin ang takot sa iyong damdamin, ipamalas ang angking galing. Tumayong buong tapang, harapin ang buhay, akapin ang tagumpay. Tulungan ang kapwa't bigyang halaga, huwag hatakin ng pababa. Isipin huwag sana ang sarili lang, pakisama't bayanihan. Subukan nating isulong at ligawan ang magandang bukas. Ikaw at ako magkasama tayo, salubungin ang kinabukasan.
As defined by the Indigenous People Rights Act of 1997, RA number 18371, or simply called as IPRA, the indigenous peoples defined as a group of people or homogeneous societies identified by self-ascription and ascription by others. And also, they continuously live as organized community on communally bounded and defined territory. They have under claims of ownership since time immemorial, occupied, possessed, and utilized such territories, sharing common bonds and language, customs, traditions, and other distinctive cultural traits. So, indigenous people are distinct social and cultural groups that share collective ancestral ties to the lands and natural resources where they live, occupy, or from which they have been displaced. The land and natural resources on which they depend are inextricably linked to their identities, cultures, livelihoods, as well as their physical and spiritual well-being. They often subscribe to their customary leaders and organizations for representation that are distinct or separate from those of the mainstream society or culture. And what is the history of indigenous people? So, before the advent of the Spanish colonization, those people of the islands in the archipelago were independent communities. The Spanish colonization from 1521 to 1896 succeeded in subjugating most of the islands of the archipelago, which eventually formed the Philippines. However, within the islands, some communities remain independent from Spanish colonial rule. Throughout the 300 years of Spanish colonial rule, these communities were able to defend their territories and evade the colonizers. They maintained their relative independence while continuing to practice their own systems and ways of life. So, this disparate historical experience created a dichotomy between the colonized lowlands colonized lowlands Filipino and the uncolonized people. Thus, evolved a distinction between the majority Filipino population who were colonized and subjugated early during the Spanish colonial period, and those who resisted and withdrew a remote inaccessible areas where they retained their original ways of life. So, it is this latter group of people who today comprise the indigenous people of the Philippines. Those who resisted and defend their territories being colonized, they are called now as indigenous people. And their population is the IPs in the Philippines are estimated at 10 to 20% of the 102.9 million national population. Yet, no official figure can be confirmed based on the census data. In cases where some data are available, IPs tend to be grouped under a single category according to geographical areas, ignoring the rich ethno-linguistic diversity existing across the country. The lack of data on the indigenous people is in itself the story that must be told. Furthermore, this lack should not then become justification for further marginalizing this highly disadvantaged group. It is imperative to recognize that IPs matter. Going forward, no data, no story. In this perspective, it is no longer acceptable if we truly want to strive and end extreme poverty and promote shared prosperity in the Philippines and beyond. So, look at the figure. This is the geographical distribution of the Philippines in indigenous people. So, as you can see, the IPRA identifies 8 ethnographic regions. So, namely, as you can see there, the CAR, the Region 1, the Region 2, and the Region 3 and the rest of Luzon covers the Region 3, 4, and 5. And then the other one is the island group, covers the Region 4, covers the Region 6, 7, and 8. And then the other one is Southern and Eastern Mindanao. And the 7th one is the Central Mindanao. And the last one is Northern and Western Mindanao. So, these ethnographic regions were designated by the government primarily for administrative purposes for representation in its commission, the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, or they simply called as NCIP, rather than based on actual ethno-linguistic groupings. The Philippines indigenous people are made up of widely diverse culture. The estimated total number of distinct indigenous ethnic groups ranges from 70 to 140. The NCIP website presents a list of 90 entries, while compilation from various sources shows 109 indigenous ethno-linguistic groups and subgroups. In this, indigenous groups has its own distinct identity, their language, and indigenous social, political, and cultural systems and practice with some similarities between and among others. So, particular generic terms are used to refer to indigenous people in different regions of the country, although the indigenous peoples usually identify themselves as belonging to a particular ethno-linguistic group or subgroup.
Okay, for now, let's proceed from Cordillera Administrative Region, or the CAR. The Cordillera region encompasses most of the areas within the Cordillera Central mountain range of Luzon. the largest range in the country. This region is home to numerous indigenous tribes collectively called the Igorot. The Cordillera Administrative Region is the only landlocked region in the country. Let's have about a question. How about the Cordillera Administrative Region was created? On July 15, 1987, Executive Order number 220 was signed in the city of Manila, creating the Cordillera Administrative Region. This region is carved out of provinces previously belonging to regions Abra, Baguio City, Benguet, and Mountain Province, and Region 2. Ifugao and Kalinga, Apayao. So let's proceed from Kankanae. Where is the Kankanae tribe located? The Kankanae domain includes Western Mountain Province, Northern Benguet, and Southern Ilocos Sur. Like most Igorot ethnic groups, the Kankanae built sloping terraces to maximize farm space in the rugged terrain of the Cordilleras. Next is the Buntuk. What is the Buntuk tribe known for? The Buntuk work metal and make spear blades with double piston bellows. Each village has traditional specialized in a single craft: baskets, pottery, beeswax, fermented sugar, cane juice, spear blades, and beach cloths. Healing ceremonies do not include singing or dancing. Ang mga patay doon no, dilo daw ko na mo entrance. Let's proceed to the question. What is the Buntuk indigenous people? The Buntuk, also known as Buntuk Igorots, live in around the town of Buntuk in the Cordillera of Luzon and speak several closely related languages. Historically, they live in large villages or towns, often called pueblos, and cultivated rice using a sophisticated system of terraces. Next is the Kalinga. Who founded Kalinga? Two early capitals were at Dantapura and Rahapura, but its historical beginnings are very hazy. The royal line of Kalinga is said to have originated from King Valley, who may have been the king of Magada, along with the originally non-Vedic lines of Anga, Pundra, Suma, and Vanga. Tinguian. What is the contribution of Tinguian in the Philippines? The Tinguian warriors, armed with traditional weapons, joined the Philippine Revolution of 1898 against the Spaniards and then the Resistance War against the Americans. Under American rule, head-taking practically disappeared after it was outlawed and head-takers were arrested and imprisoned. What is the another term or name of Tinguians? The Tinguians, also called Itneg, are engaged in various crafts, the most important of which is bamboo craft production. It is the reason that Abra is aggressively positioning itself as the bamboo capital of the Philippines. Next is the Apayao or Isneg. The term Isneg derives from a combination of is meaning recede and unique of interior. Thus, it means, or does it mean, people who have gone into the interior. In Spanish missionary accounts, they together with the Kalinga and other ethnic groups between the northern end of the Cagayan Valley and the northeastern part of the Ilocos were referred to as Los Apayaos, an allusion to the river whose banks and nearby rugged terrain were inhabited by the people. They were also called Los Mandayas, as reference to an Isneg word meaning upstream. The term Apayao has been used interchangeable with Isneg after the name of the geographical territory that these people have inhabited for ages. The province of Apayao, however, is not exclusively peopled by the Isneg. There has been a large influx of Ilocano over the year. From Cagayan, the Itawit have entered and occupied the eastern regions. The Aita inhabit the northern and the northeastern parts of the province. And then there are Kalinga, a major group in the province south of Apayao. Next is the Ibaloy. The Ibaloy are mostly an agricultural people who cultivate rice, terrace fields. Many contemporary Ibaloy have integrated into mainstream Filipino culture. Ibaloy society is composed of the rich, baknang, and other poor classes, the cowhands or the pastol, farmhand or yung mga tagapagsilbi, and non-Ibaloy, yung mga slaves. Next is the Ifugao. Ifugao group of wheat rice agriculturalists. Ifugao culture values kinship, family ties, religious and cultural beliefs. Ifugao are unique among all ethnic groups in the mountain province for their narrative literature such as the Hudud, an epic dealing with hero ancestors sung in a poetic manner. Ifugao was formerly known as a part of the Old Mountain province. It was created as an independent province on June 18, 1966 by virtue of Republic Act number 4695, otherwise known as the Division Law of Mountain Province. Next is the Ilocos region. Ilocos region in the Philippines, encompassing the northwestern coast of Luzon Island, is known for the historic sites, beaches, and well-preserved Spanish colonial city of Vigan. Dating from 16th century, Vigan's Mestizo district is characterized by cobblestone streets and mansions with wrought iron balconies. Further north, Log City is a jumping-off point of the huge La Paz sand dunes. Ilocos Sur is the history buff's paradise, is home not one but to UNESCO. UNESCO means United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Next is the Pangasinense. Pangasinense is the ethno-linguistic group living in Pangasinan. Pangasinense are also known with the same attitude as Filipino. They are also hospitable, family-centered, religious, respectful, and hardworking. Apart from this, they are also lovers of their values and heritage. Next is the Igorots. The indigenous people, or IP, called the Igorots, from the Spanish term Ilogolotes, or the people of mountain of the Cordillera region of the North Luzon, defender their ancestral lands from foreign invaders, as they see land as life where their culture and identify are molded. The term Igorot is an old Tagalog word meaning people from mountains and is a general term used to include all of the mountain tribes from the Cordilleras. The Spanish adopted this term, but it was generally used in negative manner, referring to savages and backward people of the mountain. When did the Igorot start? The Igorot revolt, Spanish La Vuelta del Igorot, was religious revolt in 1601 against Spanish attempts to Christianize the Igorot people of northern Luzon. In the Philippines, Governor General Francisco del Telo de Guzman sent Lieutenant Mateo de Aranda with Spanish-Filipino colonial troops. Next is the Balangao. Although some Buntoks of Nathunin and Parasiles identify themselves as Balangaos, Gadangs, or Kalingas, the term Buntok is used by linguists and anthropologists to distinguish speakers of the Buntok language from neighboring ethno-linguistic group. They formerly practiced head hunting and had distinctive body tattoos. Aside from wet terrace farming and their handcrafts, the Balangao people have feature distinguishing them from the neighboring indigenous group, including their beliefs, dances, rituals, and songs. Such a rich cultural treasure that the Balangao communities hope to pass on their descendants. And that's all for the Cordillera Administrative Region Indigenous Peoples.
These are the indigenous cultural communities in Region 2. First is Agta. The Agta people look differently than the average Filipino. As you can see in the picture, they are darker skinned and have blacker, shorter, curly hair. They are called the Agta Negritos of the Philippines. One of their way of life is the hunt and trade. Agta people consider themselves first and foremost hunters and fishers. They are actually among the most skilled when it comes to jungle survival. They are even able to make use of plants as herbal medicine and possess tools and weapons. And also, they are able to build temporary houses made of stick. The Agda people are scorned in the eyes of Filipinos. They are experiencing language loss as well as land loss. They are powerless and have no claims to lands. These people have no legal rights. Agta women are treated less than dogs to the outside world. These people need help yet nobody is available to provide any aid. Next is Kalanguya Ikalahan. The Kalanguya also sometimes referred to as the Ikalahan. It represents a largely geographically contiguous area. Kalanguya are considered a subgroup of the Ifugao people. There are two classes of society, the rich, Baknang or Kadangyan, and the poor, Bitig or Abiting. These are the example of rich society and poor society. Look at the picture. Kalanguya Ikalahan tribe share their unity, concern, and togetherness in their daily involvement in the activities. Each member helps in all the work until such occasion is finished. This bayanihan system is called danga. Another good practice of help and unity in the system of Balhan. This is a heartfelt giving of money or any item for a person who is dire need. The family is need goes around to his relatives and friends to solicit their donation in cash or in kind. Next is Bugkalot. Bugkalot are known as headhunter. Headhunter means the practice of hunting a human and collecting the severed head after killing the victim. Aside from headhunter, Bugkalot men love hunting wild animals and fish for food, while the women are in charge in plant cultivation. Young men are trained for fighting, hunting, dancing, singing, playing of instrument and accessories making, while the young women are trained in housekeeping, plant cultivation, singing, dancing, playing instrument, weaving and making attires and accessories. Bugkalot are known for their colorful attire, musical instruments and artifacts which are shown in their blue upper pictures in museums. Baliling is the upper festive dance of Bugkalot. The Bugkalot subsists on the kaingin system of agriculture with rat crops as their main product. Next is Isinay. The indigenous farming system of the Isinay is agriculture. During the American colonial period, the Isinay continued to practice wheat agriculture, hunting, and fishing. One distinct feature of the Isinay is wedding ritual, was the band of musicians hired to accompany the couple from the house to house to the church to play the march music from the church door to the altar and to accompany the newlyweds back to the wedding festivities at the girl's house. Next is Gadang. Gadang comes from the word ga meaning heat and dang meaning burned. This likely alludes to the fact that the Gadang are generally darker of skin than other Cordillera people.
Many Gadang live in the highlands of southeastern Kalinga Apayao and eastern Bontoc and Isabela province. The lowland Gadang are now almost indistinguishable from the Ilocano and Ibanag people, but the Highlanders still maintain a unique culture. Leadership is achieved based on bravery, skills, knowledge of customary law and wealth, and usually in association with the status of Mingal or Great Warrior. So, they practice as our kulak trading partnership. Mo ni gitawag nila na pudon. And also, Gadang people have rituals, are led by both male and female. The male prestige feast occurs once in a lifetime. Wealth must be accumulated beforehand to finance the 7 elaborate rituals. Another indigenous cultural communities in Region 2 is Agay. The Agay people known based as rice, banana, and corn farmers, as well as day laborers. It was the pride of their culture as well as one of the tribe's oldest indigenous skills are weaving baskets, bags, chairs, mats, and many more. Many challenges persist for the Agay, including non-inclusive access to education for many of their children. Despite having free education in primary and secondary schools, with limited livelihood and income by parents, many Agay children unable to progress in school. As youth are forced to drop out from school, they are at high risk of suffering exploitation and violence because of their skin. Another is dumagat. The term dumagat may have been derived from the word gubat, forest, and hubad. The dumagat are animist. Practices and beliefs differ from person to person. Within their culture, much of the behavior is governed by roles between types of kinsmen. They are very poor. Their livelihood range from hunting and gathering to having gardens and raising coconuts. They typify the outstanding negrito, physical traits of dark brown to black color and curly hair. The Dumagats have no religion of their own, although they claim to believe in nameless, faceless gods whom they invoke to protect them from danger. Next is Ibanag. Ibanag are lowland tribe of Cagayan. Their name is derived from the term banag, meaning from the river. Their livelihood is fishing and agriculture. Ibanag people live simply in the valley near the Cagayan River and the massive mountains of Sierra Madre surround them. Their practices and traditions are important to the Ibanags because it defines them that these things are developed their trademark. Traditional Ivanag practice dictated that families must allow each newborn's placenta to be carried away by the river as a gift to the spirit of the river. The materials used in healing of or death rituals were using thrown into the river to purify them and carry away the cause of illness or death. Next is Itawis. The Itawis are culturally and linguistically close to the Ibanag. The Ibanag language is the mother tongue of the Itawis. Farming is the leading source of livelihood. Rice is the main staple produced in commercial quantities. In addition, they raise domesticated animals such as poultry, carabaos, and cattle. Some of them are work in hunting, forestry, fishing, and related work occupation. And some of them are working in cigarette factories and food processing. Next is Ibatan. The Ibatan's culture has been largely influenced by the climate of Batanes. Due to severe climatic disruptions to their agriculture, Ivatan have developed numerous successful strategies to protect their food supply and way of life. Before Spaniards arrived in the Philippines, Ivatans built their houses from cogon grass. It is a Sinanduparan Ivatan house, one of the oldest structures in the Ivatan or Batanes Island. The house is made of limestone and coral and its roofing of cogon grass. One of the endemic clothing of the Ivatan is the bakol. A bakol is a headgear designed to protect the wearer from sun and rain. It is made from buyayoy palm fiber. The Ivatan have legends, and that are called kavata. They have the rawod chants that chronicle the adventures of the Ivatan's forefathers as they escape a disaster. The sea is vital to the Ivatan's way of life. They depend on the flying fish, or dibang, and dolphin fish, or arayo, present on the shores of Batanes in the month of March. Next is Carao. The Carao tribes live in the municipality of Bocod Benguet. The Caraos are predominantly farmers. Their main season crops are the kintuman, one kind of rice, and the talon. They also produce vegetables and fruits, raise poultry, swine, and cattle, and gather from the Benguet pine tree. Their distinctive artistic performance are itundak and tinibtibak music and Tai Chick dance. Their moral values can be reflected in the Badeo, Adibay, or Bangil. The Karaos were able to retain their distinct dialect, costumes, practices, and life ways in spite of being surrounded by Ibaloy and Kalanguya, other neighboring tribes. And we are now on Region 3. These are the indigenous cultural communities. First is Ita. It's possible that Ita is derived from the Malay term hitam, which means black, or from its cousin in the Philippine language itom or itim, which means people. Ita, also known as Aita, Alta, Ata, Ita, and Ati, in early ethnographic records of the people, were sometimes referred to as little blacks. Because of their dark skin, the Itas are skillful. Traditionally, Itas are hunting and gathering indigenous people. They're actually among the most skilled when it comes to jungle survival. Itas are belong to the marginalized sector of the country. They often displaced because their homelands have been due to illegal logging. Next is Negrito. The word Negrito is the Spanish diminutive of negro, used to mean little black person. Many of these Negrito groups still live by hunting and gathering, trading wild meat and forest product to the Filipino farmers around them in exchange for rice or corn. They also practice some marginal cultivation. One silent feature of Negrito religion is its noticeable lack of systematization. Because of the animistic beliefs and practices of the Philippine Negritos are individualistic and sporadic. They exert less control over the people's daily lives than do the religious system of other non-Negrito animistic societies in the Philippines. The other indigenous cultural communities in Region 3 is Baluga. The term Ita is offensive to certain Filipinos because of their dark skin tone. The Ita are sometimes referred to as Baluga, which translate as hybrid in Central Luzon. One subgroup of the Ita of Northern Luzon is known as the Ibok, which comes from the Filipino term bukid or feld and refers to people who dwell distant from the lowlands. Baluga are collectively known as the Ita or the Agta. Baluga has goblin, or it is the Paris spirit, or other possible translation in Ilocano. Next is Abiling. It is believed that the Abiling are also descendants of the most popularly known Ita tribes like the Mag-Indi, Magachi, Ambala, and Marivelenyo. Although there is no specific number of how many the Avilings are in Tarlac, they coexist peacefully together with the other Ita groups in Tarlac. They are a peace-loving people who live in the mountains. They live by hunting baboy ramo, deer, fish, and other wild animals. Their physical features are slightly bigger than the popularly known size of the Aborigines. The Abilins stay also together in communities scattered all over the highlands of Banban, Capas, Sanusi, Mayantok, and Tarlac City. The Abiling will dance around it as forms of thanksgiving. These are the indigenous cultural communities in Region 4 or Calabar Zone. First is Remontado. The Remontado used to be hunters and gatherers before they switched to shifting, cultivation, or kaingin. The Remontado are of mixed blood, hence they have a combination of Negrito and lowland Filipino features. Although the Remontado are semi-nomadic, there is no reported case of heavy out migration. They live mainly in the part of Rizal province. The Remontado believe in life after death. Next is Tadyawan. The Tadyawan practice wedding agriculture similar to the other Mangyan tribes. Oftentimes, they would also venture to the lowlands to sell their harvested crops and livestock. Additionally, just like the Iraya Mangyans, they would be seen eating mostly rice, bananas, sweet potatoes, and other root crops as their steady diet. Their traditional attire is slowly giving way to modern clothing. The Tadyawan live on the eastern and northeastern edge of Mindoro. Next is Dumagat Remontado. Just like in Region 2, Dumagat are still exists in this region, and they are called the Dumagat Remontado. Dumagat Remontado are an indigenous people, descendant of lowlanders who fled from Spanish colonizer and chose to live in the mountains. The word remontado derives from the Spanish word for flee. They also attribute this word to being mixed-blooded as they intermarried with the Negritos living in the mountains. Their primary language is Remontado Dumagat. Their primary religion practiced by the Remontado Agta is ethno-religion. Ethno-religion is deeply rooted in a people's ethnic identity, and conversion essentially equates to the cultural assimilation. These are the indigenous cultural communities in Region 5 or Bicol. First is Kabihog. Agta is the generic name in Bicol for the natives with dark colored skin, short stature, and kinky hair. In Camarines Norte, where the culture has been preserved, call themselves Kabihog. The Kabihog tribe is one of the surviving minorities in Bicol who were found in highlands of Camarines Norte to have no lands and homes to call their own. Kabihog culture is an ancient blend layers of ethnic influences and is a rich and unique tradition comprised of fascinating legends, costumes, values, music, and dance. Kabihog region Kabihog religion can vary significantly between islands, district, and family groups. Next is Tabangnon. The Tabangnons are a group of wild mountain people living in Ginayungan in the province of Tayabas, down to Paracali, Camarines Norte. They are believed to be the offspring of the Remontado and Agta marriage. Like other Agta tribes, they genetically inherited the curly hair and dark skin of their ancestor, although they are taller compared with the other Agtas. Their culture is closely similar with that of the Agtas. They are multilingual speaker and can speak their Tabangnon language, Bicolano and Tagalog. Next is Abiyan. Abiyan means companion or fellow in local dialect for the Ita of Camarines Norte and Camarines Sur. And next is Isarog. Hunting is their main means of subsistence. They use pointed stick called galod to kill birds, wild deer, monkeys, and wild pigs. The Isarog Agta live on Mount Isarog, east of Naga City in Camarines Sur, Bicol region. This tribe is by far the most endangered ethno-linguistic Negrito population as only a few remain today. They are considered different because of their dark complexion as the Spaniard described it as evil. Due to the oppressive nature of the Spaniard in Bicol, the Agta were forced to climb and live on Mount Isarogs and continue their customs, culture, and tradition there. Tobacco is the cultivation became their way of life, but the Spaniards hindered their trading of tobacco.
Now move on to the indigenous cultural communities in the Philippines found in Region 6. First, we have the Panay Bukidnon people. The Panay Bukidnon people are the native dwellers on the more interior portions of Panay, covering the interior barangays of the four provinces Aklan, Antique, Iloilo, and Capiz. In the 13th century, during the Sri Visayan Empire's power, a group of Borneans headed by Datu Puti escaped the tyrannical rule of Sultan Makatunaw and sailed northward until they reached Panay. The group was composed of 10 chieftains, their wives, and some slaves, and they are known in history as the 10 Datus of Borneo. Their descendants are then now called as the Panay Bukidnon people. Every activity they have in their community is influenced by the environmental spirits and deified umalagads or the souls of the departed ancestors. Their economic life is largely dependent on kaingin and agriculture, supplemented with hunting and fishing. In their society, all members tend to care about the welfare of one's community. Every community gatherings they have, such as drink fests, weddings, and religious activities, strengthen group integration. Labor for them is a universally shared activity. There are no hired laborers, nor is there any concept of compensation or monetary for any kind of work rendered. Their marriages are contracted by the parents. This is usually done even before the children are born. The Panay Bukidnon culture is a warrior society, in which we can find so much evidences on their epic stories. Men are considered as handsomely attired when adorned with weapons for them to be well protected in a fight. Generally speaking, these mountain people are conservative in their ways, and they have retained so much beliefs, cultures, and traditional practices up until today. Next, we have the Aklanon people. Aklanon refers to the people of Aklan province, their language and culture. They pronounce the name of their province as Akyan, which derives from Akayan, a place that boils and bubbles. This is referring to the river that appears to boil and bubble every summer. In pre-colonial times, Aklanon cultivated rice and corn, and the women wove abaca and cotton. They fished and panned for golds in the tributaries of the Aklan River. By 1844, the Aklanons started cultivating tobacco, coffee, cacao, and sugar, and some women began to specialize the beautiful embroidery. Up until today, agriculture is still the main occupation, with rice and corn produced in abundance as temporary crops. Coconut is considered as the primary permanent crop, a crop that does not need replanting after each harvest and can last up to several seasons. Root crops are planted primarily for self-subsistence and for some supplementary income. Poultry and swine were raised for commercial purposes. The topography of the province favors the development of the fish pond industry and coconut plantations. A colorful and vibrant barometer of the rise and fall of the Aklan market is the Tabuan, which is a makeshift weekly market where people from the lowlands and uplands meet and barter their products. Another, we have the Panayanon or the Suludnon people. Sulud are the most populous of the varied cultural linguistic groupings inhabiting the mountains of Panay, Capiz, Iloilo, and Antique. They occupy the bogged finger-like slopes along the banks of the river of the interior and higher mountains. Religion is an intimate part of the Sulud life. Every activity they have is in conformity to the wishes of the spirits and deities, and they do everything to please these divinities. They are also known for their practice of keeping binukot, hiding their beautiful women away from the eyes of the men. They are treated like princesses and are auctioned when they are in the right age to marry. When a sulud dies, everyone in the community condoles the bereaved family by giving material things needed for the wake. If the deceased is an important person, he is placed in a coffin, and the coffin is then placed underneath a special shed of cogon grasses. But if the deceased is just an ordinary man, he is simply buried under the ground. Next, we have the Cuyunon people. Cuyunon people are those living in Cuyu Islands along with the northern and southern Palawan. They are considered as an elite class among the hierarchy of native Palawanos. They produce red rice in abundance. A sizable number of domesticated animals such as goats, fowls, and hogs were raised, and the sea yielded much fishes and pearls. For them, the most profitable product is the salangana or the bird's nest, which were built by the balansasayaw birds. Chinese traders placed premium on this, which were extremely savory and nourishing when cooked in soup, and were medicinally useful for the treatment of stomach ailments. The island's main occupation is agriculture, with fishing as the secondary one, which renders enough marine foods marketed in Manila. The earliest known types of weapons were blowpipes, and other tools of war were curved dagger, full-length spears, and the karasas or the full-body shields. The last one we have, the Batak people. Batak means people of the mountains. They live in the forest of northern Palawan in the western Philippines. In their everyday lives, they try to be sustainable as possible, but they need money to interact with the modern world that surrounds them. They earn this primarily by harvesting something called kopal. Kopals are resins that grows in trees that were extracted by making incisions with a mache in the trunks and then collecting the liquid that leaks out. It is then sold to companies that use it to make things like varnish. The Batak people practice a form of tribal religion under the umbrella of animism, which is the belief that plants, animals, and inanimate objects such as stones, rivers, and even weather are fully alive and in possession of a spirit. This belief is part of the reason the Batak are so peace-loving and avoid conflicts as much as possible. In the past, this tribe practiced polygamy, with the strongest man in the community having the most number of wives and children, proving himself to be a great provider. However, with the introduction of Christianity and monogamy, most of the Batak now are adopting the monogamous family unit. So let's now move on to the indigenous cultural communities found in Region 7. First, we have the Ati people. The Ati people are acknowledged as indigenous people of Panay belonging to the Negritos of the Philippines, whose communities are distributed across the provinces of Aklan, Capiz to the north, Antique to the west, and Iloilo to the southeast. They share common physical traits with other Negritos such as Aita and Agta, having short and lean body build, kinky hairs, dark chocolate brown to almost black skin, round eyes, and broad nose. They normally inhabit the mountains of Panay and settle on areas with good water supply. They practice a very traditional way of life and rely on forest resources for their food, shelter, clothing, medicine, and other necessities. Between December and February, several dance festivals celebrate the Ati indigenous people, namely the Ati-Atihan of Aklan, the Binayaran of Antique, Sinulog of Cebu, Mascara of Bacolod, and the Dinagyang of Iloilo. They traditionally believed in a number of supernatural beings called Anito, or the good spirit, Kamana, or the malicious spirit, and Apo na Malyari, or the universal creator. Second, we have the Magahat people. Magahats refers to the shifting cultivators in the mountainous areas of southeastern Negros. They practice wooden agriculture, food gathering, and animal hunting as their means of subsistence. Pregnancy and birth practices are related. They are aware that the sexual union is needed for conception. When the pregnancy is certain, the mother of the woman becomes her advisor. The pregnant woman is instructed to take a bath in a particular stream and is given a tonic of roots in boiling water every day during her pregnancy. During childbirth, the woman is expected to suffer in silence and is to be assisted by a babaylan or a medicine man. She delivers in a sitting position with her back pressed against a wall. A rope is hung from the roof directly in front of the woman, and she hangs onto the roof to attain the delivery position. And third, we have the Iskaya people. The Iskaya is an indigenous tribe found in the hinterlands of the towns of Duero, Guindulman, Pilar, and Sierra Bullones, Bohol, southeast interior. The settlement of this tribe is at Biabas, Guindulman, which is established in the early 20th century by Mariano de Tahan. They revered a supreme being which they called by the name Suno. The religious community was headed by a bishop whom they called as Biki and Beriki. At earlier times, Iskaya men wore shirts made of piña raffia with a Chinese-style collar, black breeches, and cotton berets. The women wore piña dresses with bulging sleeves. They are not allowed to cut their hair short nor wear trousers. The Iskaya practice communal farming, wherein all products is for the benefit of the whole community. They also believe that people originated from butterfly. In some way, the butterfly interacted with the lion and the lioness who gave birth to a monkey. That monkey mated with another and gave birth to the first humans. And now let's move on to Region 8. First, we have the Mamanwa people. The Mamanwa are one of the three groups that occupy a very distinct position in Philippine populations. They are classified as a Negrito subgroup. The lifeway of the Mamanwa is founded on slash and burn cultivation on small patches and minimal wet rice agriculture. Food gatherings is heavily relied upon. The bow and arrow, which were once useful and important in hunting, are no longer used. Settlements are generally small, ranging from 3 to 20 households in higher ridges or valleys. The houses are usually arranged in a circle. Traditionally, dwellings are without walls. And the last but not the least is the Bajau tribe. The largest sea tribe over Southeast Asia is the Bajau tribe. They are fish folker who have been using sustainable fishing methods for over 1,500 years. The people of the Bajau tribe are a nomadic seafaring tribe. The men are skilled fishermen, specifically the art of pantane fishing or the spear fishing. They traditionally lived on houseboats, moving through the sea wherever was needed to fulfill their fishing requirements. They are also talented divers who dives for pearls and fishes which will be sold to the main markets in Cebu.
Indigenous peoples are often marginalized and face discrimination in countries' legal systems, leaving them even more vulnerable to violence and abuse. Indigenous human rights defenders who speak out face intimidation and violence, often supported by the state. In addition, individuals may be physically attacked and killed just for belonging to an indigenous people. Peaceful, peaceful efforts by indigenous peoples to maintain their cultural identity or exercise control over their traditional lands, which are often rich in resources and biodiversity, have led to accusations of treason or terrorism. The Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997, or the IPRA, or Republic Act number 8371, recognizes and advocates for the rights of indigenous cultural communities, ICC and IPs, and in the Philippines. According to the Commission of Human Rights Commissioner Gwendolyn Lee Pimentel Gana, the IP month is celebrated annually in October by virtue of Proclamation number 1906, year of 2009, which commemorates the signing of the Indigenous People Rights Act on October 29, 1997. In addition to IP's right to keep land, the IPRA tackles several rights bestowed onto members of indigenous cultural communities. One of it is the right to ancestral domain. The second one is right of self-governance and empowerment. And then the third one is right to social justice and human rights, and also right to cultural integrity, right to equal protection and non-discrimination, rights during armed conflicts, and then right to basic services, and the last one is rights of women and children. Furthermore, the state shall take measures to protect their rights and guarantee respect for their cultural integrity, and to ensure that members of the ICCs and the IPs benefit of an equal footing for their rights and opportunities which national laws and regulations grant to other members of the population. So that's all for today. Thank you.